Hello again, everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our Ask the Experts webinar series, Uncovering Emotion Through Online Qualitative Research. I just want to go over a few housekeeping items before we get started. There's two different ways that you can communicate with us throughout the webinar, the chat box and the Q&A box. Please use the chat box for all technical issues related to the platform and the Q&A box for any questions related to the content of the webinar. With that, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. We have Zoe Dowling, our SVP of Research here at Focus Vision. Zoe is an eclectic blend of researcher, technologist, sociologist, and marketer, and she uses her extensive research expertise to help clients best apply Focus Vision's technological solutions. Joining Zoe is Eliza Pollock, qualitative research strategist. Eliza has 20 years of international insights work and thrives on digging into consumers' attitudes and behaviors and translating them into meaningful insights for brands. At this time, our panelists are going to dive right into the discussion. Zoe, would you like to get started?
I would. Thank you very much, Rachel. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. And hello, Eliza. I'm really delighted that you're joining us here for this conversation today. And everybody, this really is just a conversation. I have questions that I prepared for Eliza. But I'm going to be actively managing and looking at the Q&A, because this is about diving into your questions and around the topic, because the last webinar did around online communities and just around online qualitative in general. Is how do you dig into something as deep as emotion in online qualitative? So we're going to try and unpack that. To get us started, I have a question for you, Lisa. Do you remember the first time you did some online qualitative research? And if you do, what was it?
Okay. Do you want me to go long or go short on this? I'll go short. I do remember it was probably 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more, just really at the beginning of the beginning of online research. It was online communities for moist wipes.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
It was, we had many communities, and it was a revelatory. I mean, I have to say, it was a very sensitive topic. We were talking to people about bathroom attitudes and behaviors, just nothing that we could really get to in focus groups, which was like a main method at that time. We could have done ethnographies, but it was just an incredible experience in talking across life stages and ways that people used moist wipes. And it was kind of the insights stage before doing some innovation work on wipes. So, and there's a longer story, but we'll save that.
Okay. But talk about diving into the deep end. Hey,
Correct.
There's this kind of new approach, and let's give it a whirl, because we want to really dig in deep into people's lives.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and truly, it's really intimate, and people are not going to reveal certain things, but because there's a little bit of distance, and because it was asynchronous, people
Mm-hmm.
could contribute, and then we could, as moderators, we could poke back in and we could probe. It really was such a great way of talking deeply about something that people don't talk about at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we're going to come back to that in an example, but to kind of to set the stage for everything that we're talking about today. And I know another question I've got is, everybody, particularly if you've not done this before, but it's always interesting even if you have done an online community and mobile ethnographies. Do you have an example you can share with us where, what to take us through, starting from the business question, the challenge that the client was trying to solve, how you went about solving it through an online community, and then what the business outcomes were?
Sure. So I've done a lot of online work in the last 10 years, and I'm a fan. So something I want to talk about is a piece of work that I did just, I think it was last year, though I've totally lost track of time, so I can't remember when it was. It was for a smoking cessation product, and the client really understood the kind of behavior of smoking and smoking cessation, and they had done a segmentation, so they were really steeped in the quantitative, and they had really kind of broken out the universe of potential users for this product in very precise ways, but they hadn't really engaged in the emotional dynamics of quitting smoking. And if you're a smoker, if you've ever been a smoker, then you know that quitting smoking is very difficult, and you often quit and restart and quit and restart and quit and restart. So they knew that the journey to quit was not linear at all, but they didn't fully understand the emotions that lead to the various milestones and the various steps within that journey. So they asked us to delve into that. So we designed a project where we had a number of, we had a very large sample, and we did diaries, and among other things that we did.
And what does a large sample mean to you? Again, just trying to give some context.
Yeah. So we had around 70 people in that project. And the reason why we had such a large sample for qualitative is because we had segmentations to kind of figure out how to integrate. But we also separated our groups into before quitting, like pre-quit, mid-quit, and post-quit, because they were such robust experiences that we wanted to make sure that we had enough people within those separate groups to really explore the dynamics within those groups. So that if you think about, 2 segments and then those kind of 3 groups, that's a lot of people. So we had, was a 2-week online community where we did a number of different activities, but what we did consistently every day was ask people to do a diary task where we asked them to either take a photo or a short video of the moment when they were tempted to smoke. And if they smoked at that moment, fine. And if they didn't smoke, that's fine. And we asked just some short questions, just a little commentary, which was, what started this? How did this begin? Where are you? What did you do? How do you feel afterwards? And, people smoke numerous times a day. So we had just a crazy amount of diary entries. And it was incredible because smoking is, again, if you smoke or if you don't know, there's a lot of shame around smoking. And if you think about, people who smoke, they're not allowed to smoke inside. They're often cordoned off outside, possibly near a garbage can. There's people don't understand why you can't quit. You did quit, you didn't quit. So much shame and not a lot of talking about it. And it just compounds people's shame. So the diary was this invitation for people to talk about their smoking in a non-judgmental way. And, we as moderators were just there to accept and capture what they were saying. We weren't therapists and we weren't there to judge them. At best, we just probed, what does that mean? Why do you think you did that? And it was really, really revelatory to see their respective processes over the 2-week period. They would kind of first maybe take some pictures and then do just like a little bit of commentary. But towards the end of a 2-week period, we had people really sharing intimate thoughts about smoking and when they started and why they're doing it now and how they feel about it now. I mean, very few people had taken the time to think about smoking in this way, and very few people had any sort of community or support around them to that encouraged them to ask those questions of themselves. And usually they had people saying, why can't you quit? Or why don't you quit? And I had one woman who said to me, no one ever asked me, why are you smoking? In a just a gentle, compassionate way. So over the course of the diary process, we had people just kind of develop a little bit of compassion for themselves. And we saw them move from, why am I smoking? I can't believe I'm smoking right now. Really? Do I really need it to, why is it that I'm doing this right now? Do I really need, maybe I can take it one step further. Maybe I can not have this cigarette right now and postpone it, and almost start to just talk themselves through the behavior. And again, like this is something that people might do in smoking cessation classes, which are very behavioral sort of psychology oriented, but not a lot of people do that. A lot of people have nicotine patches and just hope, magically that it will go away. They don't do the talking and kind of the internal work that kind of forgives them for making these errors, and maybe for doing something that is dangerous for them, but they do it anyway. So it was fantastic for them. For me personally, because I'm extremely emotionally driven and I'm kind of like a closet teacher, it was just such a joyful, delightful, humbling experience to see people change their perspective on themselves. And from a business perspective, it was really important. I mean, on one level, we were able to pull out all the kind of times when people smoke, and that helped the team figure out when they could intercept them with communications for the product. But also we realized that if we really wanted this product to have a sustainable success, which is not just people buying it, but people stopping smoking, then we needed to integrate some sort of journaling process, some sort of behavioral element to the product, so that people can, feel their strength, their growing strength, as they move through the smoking process and the non-smoking, the smoking cessation process.
So, I mean, fascinating study and topic. It sounds like as part of it, and I guess my question is, was this intended or not, or expected or not, that it was a very reflexive process for the participants. They were reflecting by the nature of doing the diary entries on what was going on. Was that something you anticipated that would kind of evolve? Because they certainly went on their journey by the sound of it.
Yeah. Certainly in doing diary studies, I've done them for different things, like how we eat chocolate or wearing glasses, or all sorts of things. We knew that there is some reflective aspect to it, and that was the point, to give people the chance. We had no idea how satisfying it would be for people, how cleansing it would be for people. That was just an ancillary benefit, which was delightful for everyone. And I still feel like I actually almost want to break the research code and dig in and see how everybody's doing. I so hope that they were able to sustain their quit. But yeah, I mean, that's the point of that diary exercise. Every day, doing the same thing, kind of making it a habit, and giving people ownership over the process, and holding back to some extent as moderators, just asking them maybe for a little bit more information, but not judging it. That's one of the powers of online work now, and video work and photo work, because people are so comfortable with videos and sharing them and making some sort of commentary. So it's really very compatible with where we are culturally.
And being a safe space. So it's balancing, to go back to the moist wipes, is balancing that private, the very private selves and the public selves.
Definitely. I mean, we designed this project, so this was an online community, we call it, but everybody was responding on their own. So I would only see the people I was working with, and they would only see me. So there was a rapport.
So it wasn't discussion between other smokers or at different stages. It was sort of a one-on-one experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it was at a different type of project with different objectives, it would have been really fruitful to have all our smokers together. But the objectives are really here to understand what motivates you to quit, and what tempts you to go back, and how do you feel afterwards. Not the type of stuff that people want to admit to people, because again, it's just so enveloped in shame.
Okay. Now, I've got two questions that come in that I think are very nice to where we are now. I'm going to answer the one that's just come in first, because it's going to stay on this particular topic of this project. So how did you ensure participants didn't feel judged? What language would you recommend for creating that safe space? Because it was clearly all about that, again, public, private selves, but okay, I'm able to speak because this is really just my truths.
I mean, just language like that. Certainly, from the beginning of the process, when we put a screener together to find people, we wanted to make sure that we talked to people. There was no language of judgment. You smoke, you do this. It was really just kind of framed around their experience. We want to talk about this. We are curious about. What goes on in your life, just very simple language around no rights or wrongs that we always talk about when we're moderating something. This is your experience. You are the expert here. We are not here to judge you. I mean, really being very overt and reiterating that all the time, because inevitably you do have people that say, I feel so bad about it, or don't look at me, don't look at me in the wrong way. And, we would just need to, just in our probes, just say, I'm not looking at you in any way at all. I'm just appreciate you sharing this with me. And I mean, for me, something that I really love about the online qualitative is just the length of time that you have with people. You can actually very quickly develop a rapport, and they can feel safe with you. I mean, if you are a safe making person, I would say, like if you really flex your empathy muscles. But I would say that, if you're on this webinar and if you're doing this work, you definitely have some empathetic muscles.
Sure.
So it's being very overt. At the beginning, there are no rights or wrongs. This is not about judgment. And framing every task, like writing every task. I always use human language. I always use people language. I might be a researcher or a marketer, but I never use any jargon. It makes me uncomfortable, and I find it very exclusionary. I don't want that at all. The way you see me here is the way you see me. Just remember your humanity. Like, respondents are people, and so are you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think this is a nice segue into the first kind of sort of a comment, and then the question. So some categories clearly have a big emotional component, and I think something around smoking cessation is definitely that. But others are more technically complex and expensive, requiring heavy cognitive investment by the consumer. Plus, they're not very involving from an identity standpoint. So the example then is furnaces, hot water tanks, lawn equipment come to mind. Is it worth delving into any emotional content within these categories?
I guess it depends on your project. I mean, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Are you trying to develop new products? Are you trying to develop communications? I would say for those two, yes, absolutely. Are you trying to just evaluate what you've already created? I don't necessarily think you need major projective techniques and emotional eliciting there. But if you want to create communications, I mean, my leaning is always towards some kind of emotional engagement, but I think you just have to manage your expectations. Like, I had someone ask me, I work with farmers, and they're really not creative. And I feel that everybody is creative. It's just different types of creativity. So I would think about, the different tasks that you can possibly engage in that are kind of your typical or better suited for your customer or your consumer. So for instance, for those farmers, I would imagine that farming is, I mean, maybe the practicals of farming or lawn management is very kind of tactical, but it's still your home, or your farm or your livelihood. So I would, have a good think about what is the universe around home furnaces, or the universe around lawn products, or the universe around farming. And think about some activities sometimes with consumers who are not creative, which I believe are creative. Maybe think about your tasks. So let's say you're doing a photo sort and you want to have people talk about or show you the best of farming, you know, like what it is at the best. And usually we have people choose pictures from the internet, or you know, just choose an image that reflects that experience. And maybe in that instance, with people who are not as creative as like filmmakers or fashion designers or modern dancers, you give them the image. You give them 20 images to choose from. You know, you choose them thoughtfully. You have a group of people to work on them so they're representative, and but give them something, or you know, give them colors. Like it's crazy to me when you ask people, choose a color, like give them paint swatches, choose a color that best represents how you feel right now. And when you force people to choose something, they're going to choose something, and they're going to say something, and then you are going to say something afterwards. I would just add, though, just to manage your expectations, as you said, smoking cessation is just a well of emotion, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And your expectation as a researcher or moderator, you might not get or access that kind of depth for lottery cards, you know, scratch cards, but you're going to access something.
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And I think what you've pulled out there is a number of different things. One, I mean, I'm certainly of the opinion, you know, oftentimes, for example, B2B, and we can easily forget that whilst we've got our professional hats on, we're still humans, and emotions still play a role in what we do. That's all the behavioral economics thinking, the system 1, system 2, and things. And so I agree with you that there's an emotional component, and that language even kind of makes it sound, by emotional we always think, yeah, you know, the extreme kind of I'm crying all the time, or I'm laughing, you know, but there's just an emotional component to all of these things, and it just depends you know, how much that's going to be dug into, or needs
Yeah.
to be dug into,
Mm-hmm.
for the question at hand. The
Yeah.
other thing that I like that you brought up, and maybe this will come up some more, but again, this idea of creativity and being able to access emotions, which is kind of leading us into our next kind of big topic area, that, you know, how do we uncover emotions in online qualitative? You kind of already jumped into, which is great, the thing of not everybody's creative. And I think we have such an interesting idea, and maybe a very narrow idea of
Yeah.
what creativity means. For a long time, I didn't think I was creative.
I know.
And I realized, because I can't draw. This is so stupid, but I'm just trying to say, you know, sometimes we think like, I'm terrible with anything. You should see my handwriting, anything, these things. I'm not neat. I can't draw, knit, paint, whatever, these things. But yet creativity comes in different forms. And I think that's the thing, and I'll then hand over to you, but my thing is we've got to find different ways to uncover people's creativities. And that's what we do with thinking about the audience and who we're speaking to. What topic are we, what business question we're trying to answer? What topic are we exploring around? And then setting sort of activities and interactions that then is going to help I'm going to say uncover that emotion, or dig into that emotion.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I could go on at length. It incenses me that we talk about people who are not creative, because that's just not the case. We're just not all creative in the same way, and so that means we just have to think about how we design these things. So in that smoking cessation project, we had 2 weeks with people. The diary was just one task. We had numerous other tasks, and you know, we had a storytelling task, kind of like a scrapbook, where we asked people to tell the history of their smoking life, and really start at the beginning and share some pictures, you know. And so this was me at 15, when I was with my friends at the park, and we smoked 4 cigarettes at the same time, and everyone was sick, and you know, just that. So we had them just throw some pictures together. We had some storytelling. Some people are not verbal like that, and maybe they need a song. Maybe they need to bring out like that song from that moment that that expresses the feeling that they felt when they were 15 or 22, or they lost their job and they just had to, you know, get their cigarette, something like that. So I think, you know, for me, I really like when you're designing something and you have a task, to have multiple ways to get into that, to get into their emotion. So for instance, you know, just that I was talking about there, we had pictures, we had stories, song lyrics. You know, I'm just thinking about, you know, personifications. A great thing to do is, if you're thinking about a brand as a person or your relationship to the brand as a relationship in your life, show the picture of that person, show the picture of that celebrity, and then talk about why. Sometimes I also give people, they don't always have the language. So I give them the emotional language, just a list of, like for instance, I've got a 13-year-old daughter. She's either happy or angry, but I know that in the anger, there's a lot of stuff in there. There's sadness, there's disappointment, there's confusion, there's intimidation, whatever. I give her the language. She doesn't have the language. Just a list of, I feel humiliated, I feel shamed, this, da. So it's helpful to have different ways to get at emotion, because some people are, again, more verbal, or they can't draw, but that's okay because they do love music and they can put together a soundtrack for that moment. That's great because they can talk about that. Just think about the different ways in, the different our different senses. And I just want to quickly go back to what is creative. I feel that, if you garden, if you cook, if you write grants for nonprofits, if you write a business plan, if you build, we're all creative. It's just different ways of it. So once we think about people in that way, there are so many more options that we can use to access their creativity.
Yeah. No, I think that's important. And I think that goes very hand in hand with accessing creativity, accessing what's sort of the emotions. You're going to get how people think, but you're also uncovering how they're feeling, and doing so in a way that's not asking directly, because that's so. And I just want to go back to, I think you've touched on this, but I know that this is there's a question coming here, and I know this is a question you receive a lot. So hoping for examples of tools and techniques for uncovering emotion that are particularly suited for online research. So I'm going to recap what I heard you say and see. So we heard storytelling in some form or another. That could be, I love the example of if you're building a playlist, because music, wow, there's a way to access emotions. I heard personification. So think about the brand, if they came to life as a person. I like to use the example of unboxing. If you're unboxing that iPhone or new Samsung, if they speak to it from their perspective, as if they were a person. I heard imagery, and we do have a question about imagery, but this is definitely, again, even just colors. That was kind of interesting. Like just as an opening point, what kind of shade are you feeling today? Yeah. I'm sure there's more, but there was 3. Any others that either you covered or just, again, because I think everybody's wanting to hear this kind of tangible. What should I be thinking about?
Yeah. So collages are great. Thinking about what is the world of farming, the ideal world of the heaven and hell of something, the heaven collage, the hell collage. People love to do collages, love to scrapbook. There's so many fabulous memes that are hilarious. Just think about emojis and memes and GIFs, and just how all this imagery has entered our world and is representing our thinking, our moments. Just think of like work from home memes that we saw at the beginning of COVID-19. Yeah. They embody so much for us. What else? So for those, I think pretending to interview someone is great. Like when you get people to talk outside themselves, it's hard for people to say, oh, I'm so intelligent, or I'm this, or I'm that. But if they're interviewed by someone for that Moist Wipes project, we had them be interviewed by a puppet. So, just in like child therapy, child therapists talk to kids through puppets. So it just kind of, it tamps down the emotion. It takes away, some of the stakes, and it's fun. So we had people talk to a puppet in interviewing themselves around their moist wipe behavior. It was great. What else can you do? Storytelling, personifications, deprivation. Deprivation is great. Taking something away from people. Think about now what you feel like being away from people. And so I've done projects where we've said to wine drinkers, don't drink wine for a week. Chocolate eaters, don't chocolate for a week. And let us know, check in every day. What are you feeling? When are you craving it? I did the same thing for a lens manufacturer. Safely asked people to not wear their glasses for certain regular behaviors and talk to us about it. It's revelatory, and it's revelatory for people. And then you build off that conversation. Why did you see that? What do you think that was? Talk to me more about that. And then, and then, and then, and then. It's very, 5 whys is a very powerful way of helping people dig deeper, dig deeper, dig deeper.
Yeah, that's great.
Trying to think if I can remember other things. Oh, I mean, like love letters to brands, why you love them, what they did for you, obituary, if they went away, what you would miss. I mean, use your creativity to think about and do some research into, psychology, how psychologists help people talk about their experiences, because there's so much fodder there to play around with. The point of these creative activities is to get people moving away from the linear and what they think they can't do. And it's fun. And it's always revelatory. It's always revelatory.
Yeah. And I'm just going to bring it back to just make sure that we're talking about online research. And that for me is the beauty of the online research, is that we can set people these activities like a deprivation for not wearing your glasses or not having that chocolate for a week or whatever it may be. And they kind of, I'm going to say, document or provide feedback on doing it. So they're not just kind of sitting in front of their computer, oh, what do I think about this? And then typing something in. There's an experience that goes along with it, and that can help them shape their thoughts and things coming to mind. And then they document in whatever way that is, be it through video, be it images or text and text.
Yeah. I mean, it's great because it flows with their lives, and it's like being with them. I mean, unless you're not with them and there's some kind of construct there, but you are in the car with them. And I mean, some of those videos that we got from the smoking, the smoking study, they were very intimate. They were in bed, people were in bed. It was everywhere where people were in those moments. And we couldn't have gleaned that from, certainly from focus groups, maybe from ethnographies, but certainly not across that incredibly vast, diverse sample in a budget, like in an efficient way financially.
Yeah, absolutely. So just a couple to round this out, questions are in. So around imagery. So we've talked about imagery and how good it is and at pulling things out, but it's a good way of asking, so what's your experience with using imagery as a means for helping participants express or share their emotions? Are there certain guardrails or watch outs or best practices? Any parameters to think about?
Yes, definitely. So I think imagery is great. I've used it for 20 years, and people, again, when you force people to find something in something, they will find something. And then it is incumbent on you to build on that and to help them kind of crack open that reflection a little bit more. So guardrails for imagery. Well, I would choose imagery as a group and try to make sure that your group is as diverse as possible, to make sure that you're not creating an image deck that is biased, that is according to me, white Canadian woman living in the United States. So to the extent that you can, collect a group of people that reflects some diversity, so that you can choose images that kind of have some breadth. Also, in terms of imagery, I really like to go crazy. Like I like to go as far out versus near in. So I always think about, like, my brief to myself when I'm choosing images, or when we're choosing images, is try to choose things that reflect experiences, but I kind of stay away from too much specificity. So if I'm looking through design magazines, because there's a lot of great imagery there, I'm really looking at some of those homes, and I don't want something that looks like necessarily like a farmhouse in Provence. I want like a crazy ad, just because I want the image to challenge people a little bit more. So not, like a Martha Stewart home, but it really depends on who you're talking to, what your project is. I would just say absolute best practice is a group of people to connect with, to make sure that you just have perspective of, just a diverse perspective.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So,
So some other nice questions are coming on. How do you, again, we might have touched on this. We have touched on this, but any suggestions around how to explore emotional connections to brands and brand perceptions in an online environment?
sure. So, great way to talk about brands is you can do collages for brands. If it's a brand that you love, then you can have just like a relationship question. I always frame it like thinking you have different people in your life, and you have different types of relationships with them. So who might this brand, the relationship that you have with this brand, which of your life relationships does this represent? And so you have people thinking about, you're forcing them to think about the people in your lives, and then you're adding another layer to it by saying, okay, maybe what would you do with this person? There's that question around like what party might you have with this person, or what's the best way of getting together with this person, and maybe give them a little bit of some help. Like, is this an intimate dinner party? Is this a big backyard barbecue? And why? Tell me more. And just kind of a lot of probes around, give me more detail around that. What is the music that you're listening to? What kind of conversation are you making? I mean, I go really like specific. Are these the people that you trust? Would you tell your problems to these people? Are these the people you go to because you just need some levity in your life? Like, really, in your language and the way that you frame the task, make it as human as possible. You're asking people to do something that's weird. And I will say, like, I've done this for 20 years, and it's weird for me to think about a brand that I know as a person. But if you're forcing me to do it, I'm going to go there. Just give me some help. So definitely personifications and building out those personifications, like, who is this person? What kind of relationship you have with them? Asking them what kind of public figure it might be and why. Collages, love letters, the history that you have with this brand, or if it's a new brand to your life, what are the associations that you have with it? I mean, just a very simple image pull that you ask of them, but ask for a number of images, and the images must reflect different ideas. So you don't want, the most annoying thing is when you get like all like teamwork and everyone has pictures like this. It's just like, all right, that kind of teamwork, fine if that's one picture, but give me 4 ideas, force people 4 different ideas and why. And, not all 4 ideas are going to be great, but maybe 2.5 are going to be fantastic. You only need 2.5. That's these are just tools. These are just springboards. They're projectives. They're helping stimulate the conversation to go deeper. So they're not the answer. The answer is in here with you and your team and how you analyze it. This is just the data. So just help get better data.
Yeah, no, that's great. A question, I think it came in earlier on in our conversation. I think we've answered this, but if Rosanna, if we haven't, hearing more about the specific tactics used to uncover emotions, as most I've heard maybe unconscious. And I think that's the whole, with the projective techniques, that is about just it's not asking directly, because it's very hard for some people. We're very in tune. I'm one of them, very in tune with my emotions and able to articulate it. Many people, that's not the case. And so we do need to use these kind of different tactics. One thing I wanted to call out that I've heard you say over and over again, I think this is incredibly important, is the probing. It's not just enough to set these great activities and bring some pictures or write a love letter to a brand, but you can say, explore it, really dig into why were you thinking that, or what does that mean to you? It seems to be such a big part of how to get there.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think there was a misnomer in the early stages that this is an automatic experience, that you just create a task for people, you upload it, they upload their inputs, and you move along. This is not an automatic experience, at least for me. And for, I would say in general, for moderators of quality, this is not an automatic experience. You do have to probe, and probing is different than when you probe in real life, because you're there in real life and you can pick up the conversation, you can pick up on people's body language, and you have proximity and you have immediacy. You don't have that here. So what I do in probes is, first of all, in online work, I reveal as much as I can about myself without leading too much. So, and that's really important to show that you're a human, and you're just a human talking to another human.
Yeah.
So in probes, here's an example. I did a lot of work around genes, and with genes, you always get people saying, oh, the kind of category associations, cool. Cool is such a vague term. What does cool mean? So then you needed to do like another exploration into cool. What does cool represent to you? Like, is it James Dean cool? Do you know what I mean? Is it this person cool? Is it, so you need to get that. And then sometimes I will give them, like in a probe, I will say, is this like a James Dean cool? Or is this like I can't think of anyone right now. Is this a cool? And that will stimulate their thinking. So of course you need to make sure that you're not leading them. You're more just like stimulating them. Is this a Zoe cool? Is this an Eliza cool? Is this a Thomas cool? Is this a Hoo cool? Like 5 different cools, just to make them think, oh no, I wasn't thinking about that at all. I mean, then I feel like, woo, victory. Okay, it wasn't any of my cools. It was your cool, but I'm making you think that there's another dimension of cool. So I would say that one thing in probes online is think about them, because you don't want to have too many. That's annoying. It's annoying for you and it's annoying for your respondent. Think about them and really craft that response. So you were saying that XYZ did da 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 da. Would you say that it was this way, or this way? And then they come back and they say, no, it wasn't that way at all. It was this way. And you're like,
yeah.
It's not just why. It's not
exactly.
just why. That's not going to get you anything. It's not that just like, tell me more. It's talk to me more about what you said here. It sounds like, Is that the case?
Okay. No, yeah. I agree. I mean, I do think, and that's just such an important point to note. It's not just these activities are incredible, but they're the starting point, or the way that we're framing it. I wanted to get to this question because I think it's important, and it's on is on a lot of our minds. So it's kind of a 2-parter. One is that we live in an emotionally charged climate. To what extent do we see this spilling over into qualitative research unrelated to COVID or Black Lives Matter? And then I'll just do the follow-up. Should I, or do you want to pause?
Okay, do the follow-up.
Okay. And what does this mean? What do you suggest moderators do for subjects unrelated to the of these issues? So you're talking about furniture, or you're talking about smoking cessation. Like, if that was, do you steer clear of the subject altogether and run the risk of letting it pollute the groups? And of course, this might be more relevant for synchronous communication, like an online focus group, as opposed to a community. Or do you address it up front, which could run the risk of framing? What do you think about dealing with where we are right now?
Right. Well, as a moderator, I am trained to go where respondents go. So I go wherever they go. And just as an example, I did some groups when I was much younger with teenagers around something that was hip and cool, and I just wasn't anymore. And someone said something like, it was dope. And as a moderator, you're trained to just like mirror their language. And so I said, like, why was it dope? It just it didn't feel great to me as authentic, but it was their language. And so I had to follow them to their dopeness, which got me somewhere. So I would absolutely follow people wherever they go. I mean, we do live in emotionally charged time. Sometimes people want a break, and they step away from that when they go to their online communities or their online groups. At the beginning of any group that I do, live or online, I always talk about how different we are, and that's fine. And I think there's a notion of like the focus group in kind of societal narrative, like everyone needs to agree. It's like, that's not the case at all. That's not your role. Your role is just to represent yourself. And if you disagree with someone, that's absolutely fine. Totally accepted here. I just tell them I would appreciate if you would disagree respectfully. And I give them the language, because I don't really know if people know how to disagree respectfully. I'm not so sure. So I just say, respectfully, Zoe, that doesn't work for me. This is what I'm thinking. I literally say that just so that they have the language and that they could say that. I think, these are all sensitive issues. And I go back to my first online project where I was talking to people about body, digestive issues. And you go there and you admit what you know, what you don't know, what makes you comfortable, what doesn't make you comfortable. I mean, as much transparency as possible helps your process. I will say, though, that as a moderator, you have a number of different roles. You're an empathizer. You're kind of like a mediator. You're kind of a therapist. You're a little bit of an actor, but you're also a manager. And you definitely need to make sure that the conversation goes where it needs to go. I mean, you're there for a purpose. So you have to know how to close a topic compassionately so that people feel represented and they don't feel like you've just shut them down. But I would say that we do that all the time. In a group, you often have one or two people who love to talk. And there's a certain point where you do have to say, we've heard some great things from Zoe. It would be wonderful if we heard from XYZ right now. Thanks so much, Zoe. And it just kind of like,
yeah
tell Zoe, oh, there are other people in this group.
Definitely managing that conversation.
Yeah.
And as I've talked about in other places, I think with online groups, it's even far more so than in person, is that it's active management of that conversation to get people to talk. Because that's the first concern that we all had, making sure that everybody has a voice, but also making sure that it's really, if somebody is being overly verbose, overly loud, overly dominant, then it's just going to have to, you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. Or else it's going to run amok, and that's it. I would just building on that, when I think about kind of all the roles that I play, that manager role is 80%, all the other things like the empathizer and the therapist and the comic and the hoo-hoo and the 1% each, you're a manager. You're not a therapist. Like, it's very satisfying for me when people walk away from a group and say like, ooh, I feel relieved. Like, that was fun. Or I loved who I met. Like, that's great, but that's an ancillary benefit. I mean, that's not what we're here for.
Yeah. Okay, I'm conscious of time, and I want to try and get through some of the other questions that we've got in there. One, I do a clarification on that I'd like to take. Somebody's asked what platform's being used, how the probe's executed. If an example, Focus Vision Revelation, which is provides an online research platform, but it's social media style. So it's kind of like bringing people into like a Facebook group, but obviously we are doing the recruitment. You're setting these activities, showing them, and it can be staged. So, you're managing the flow of when people are seeing things. And then that's how you're probing, because they're putting their responses to the activity you've set them. And then you can follow up and have that kind of a back and forth discussion with it.
Yeah. And usually when I use something like Revelation, it's one-on-one. It's a one-on-one experience. It's not a group experience unless there's a moment where I feel like it's necessary. So for instance, I did some work on rum, and it was really about like personal experiences around drinking and this, that, and the other. And then the last task was create your ideal rum. And we had given people all these physical materials, so like uh, different leathers and fluffy things and bottle types, so that they could actually at home create their rum and then upload that picture. And we had everybody do that individually, and then we opened up the group so that people could comment. I mean, really pick your moments for people to be grouped together, because just like in real life, if you think about social media, most people are lurkers. Not everybody is a talker.
Yeah.
So I think about these experiences as an incredible opportunity to go deep with one person across many people,
Yeah.
not a big group.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I would say that there's definitely a time and a place for bringing people in for that conversation. Again, it's all about your business question. What
Correct.
do you need to answer? And
Absolutely, absolutely.
For sure. There's been 2 questions around uncovering emotion to prompted stimuli. So for example, message or concept testing. And the other question said, any effective techniques you've used to discuss or prompt emotional reactions to stimulus for communications?
Okay, so are we talking about stimulus like concept boards or something like that?
I read that as being like a concept board or even an ad. If you're showing somebody like doing an ad, say a qualitative ad test, if you like, to see how it's resonating.
Sure. So, okay. So I would say, like, if it's a concept, I think something that isn't already perfected in an ad is better fodder for emotional exploration, for that kind of like real lateral exploration. So for a concept, just like an idea that it's expressed as a sketch and maybe some copy, you could do a collage. You could ask people for, like, how might this fit into your life? How would you use it? And create a template around how would you use it? Who would be there? How would you feel? And have them do a collage, and maybe even a soundtrack for that. Yeah, that'd be good. And the food that you eat as well. I mean, just like get into it, because then you would get a rounded experience. I'm doing something like that coming up, and it's for a new product idea. It's just where the concept is just a very loose sketch. I mean, about a potential use case and some explanation about what this product can be. And we're using it as a springboard to collages for something like that. For finished ads, when something is so perfect, people look at it and integrate it as final. So that is not going to be, I would say, as like your output is not going to be as rich and as big and lateral as for your concept. Let's see, for ads, what sort of emotional? I think you can go back to the brand, like what would the brand do for you? Like after you see this ad, maybe personification of the brand afterwards, and maybe have them do like a personification pre-exposure to the ad, and then personification after exposure to the brand, and make it fun, like, so have them choose a public figure. I did, like maybe give them a range of public figures, or have them choose their own public figure, and who is that brand before, show them who is that brand afterwards. Maybe it's the same thing. That's fine. That's your learning, why. So maybe something like that, because again, when you have a finalized ad that looks like something that you would see online or on TV, people telegraph it as like, oop, this is complete. It's done. I don't want to affect it anymore.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm going to do another clarification question. Conducting actual groups. What about conducting actual groups? Do you have a platform for that? 6 participants and a moderator, screen sharing capabilities. And yes, we have that through Focus Vision Interview. And there's a lot of other capabilities that you can use or not use. So definitely encourage you to look at that.
Can I say something on that?
Please
personally, I mean, on my real life groups, I only like 6 people, because you want a nice conversation where people feel comfortable and safe with each other. And I find 6 is just that right kind of dinner party number. Online, I like even fewer people. There's always going to be, it's very easy to be distracted online. Personally, I like a 4-person group, maybe a 5-person group, 6 people plus you, that's 7 people here.
A lot.
That's a lot.
And I think that's a great build, because I'm very much in the same boat as you. I actually prefer 3 to 4. And just
I was going to say that too.
Because it's hard. I think I said earlier, with an online group, there's a much more active moderation. That is just part of it. And so, and it can be challenging, and also getting everybody to have their voice. So literally 4 minutes a maximum. I wanted to, well, there's some other practical ones that it would be good to go to, just around how many days would you recommend to get all these insights on the platform with consumers? Is there a maximum number of days that's ideal?
I mean, it really depends. It really depends on your project. It really depends what you want to know. So, I mean, I've done things that are 3 days. I've done things that are a week. I've done things that 2 weeks. I will say that 2 weeks is very long. It's very long for people. And if you're doing like an activity every other day for 2 weeks, it's long. For me, the optimal is like 7 or 8 days, because remember, you're also, maybe you're taking 1 day on, 1 day off, just to give people a little breathing room, to catch up with maybe some respondents who haven't logged on in time. I think like 7 days, but really it's around 8 or 9 days for you as the moderator is a nice period of time for that smoking cessation project. By the time we got to the 9th day of our diary, we had so much information, we stopped it. We stopped the diary then. It was enough, and we still had a number of days to go. So for me, 2 weeks is too long, 3 days for specific projects, and in between there.
Okay. No, great. I'm going to put one last question. I apologize to everybody whose question didn't get to. I tried to keep a flow going. There is one that came earlier on, and I kind of would love to hear more myself. So I guess I'm using my moderator skills to just kind of my power to go. So can you talk a little bit more about using song lyrics in research? Any examples? And I hadn't actually thought about that, and I thought it's kind of cool.
Okay, sure. I mean, there's some people who love songs, and it really is such an incredible well of emotion for people. Personally, it's not for me, so it wouldn't work for me. If someone said, what's the soundtrack? I feel like, I'm just going to go back to the 80s. Everything is back to the 80s when I was a kid. But for instance, for my husband, he's an engineer type, and he's very emotional, but on the outside it looks like like a building, but he loves music so much, and he can really lose himself in music, and he has moments and feelings and songs for those moments. So really, a soundtrack is just like putting a playlist together. Like, what would your Spotify playlist be for when you first met that brand, or when that brand first answered an important question for you, or did something for you, or I love Trader Joe's. So what is your playlist for Trader Joe's? And then you would get, a number of songs, but you need to ask people why. There's no benefit to people providing an image, a song, a lyric, a something or other, if they do not explain why, because then it's up to you to explain them to yourself. That just doesn't work at all. You don't know them. You need their perspective. But I would say this thing for song lyrics and for all these things. When you're designing a question, give people 2 different ways to address it. I mean, I could do the song lyric thing and I could do the playlist thing. It's definitely not my passion place. I could do pictures like crazy, like I would be a crazy scrapbooker. So just, give it as an option. Like, do you have a playlist for this, or do you have a movie that represents that time, something like that?
Okay. And I hate to cut you off, but we are on the hour, so we're already kind of over. Thank you so much, Eliza. I think that was fantastic. I hope everybody listening in enjoyed it as well. Thank you for your questions. And over to you, Rachel, to close it up.
Thanks so much. And thank you, Zoe and Eliza, so much for joining us today. It was a wonderful discussion. Unfortunately, like Zoe said, we've reached the end of our time together. If there were any questions that didn't get answered, we will definitely be following up soon, or you can email us at webinars@focusvision.com and we will respond to your question at that time. Aliza, thanks so much for joining us today. Everybody have a great day.